So there are currently 100 on display. Suits of armor, armor components, swords, staff weapons, lots of money at that time. A lot of that went to things like the Knights exhibition, I think the Samurai exhibition was also, it's covered conservation costs. I know that those have been some of the things that have been spent on. The $40,000 this year is kind of the beginning of a fundraising process aimed directly toward the permanent Arms and Armor installation. To get excited about the armor, like it's like it's got a human shape and a human being wore it, and so even people who don't necessarily know about art, they'll look at a suit of armor and they'll say, "Oh wow, I wonder what it was like to wear that." So so armor really does draw people in, and that's definitely my experience from Higgins. The grip is made of a copper alloy, which is why it's not as obviously rusted as the blade is. And so the bone kind of turns like a bug into a feature, as it were. And it's inscribed, it's decorated. It's like very unusual to have like such a fancy dagger. Usually the surviving examples are much more plain, they're undecorated. And this even has some traces of gilding on it. So this was gold. It was obviously owned by somebody who was really important and well-to-do. As these things go, it's in great condition. It must have been, deep under the silt at the base of in a river or a pond or something like that, where there wasn't enough oxygen for it to fully rust out. Plate armor came in really late in the Middle Ages, and so that kind of chainmail shirt is, what knights were wearing from, when knights originated around 800, 900 or so until...
You couldn't get a dagger through that. So
this is all samurai objects. Of course, they do talk about sort of Japanese Middle Ages, but it's it's a different environment. But so you can kind of compare and contrast. So that is samurai. This one is this one is weird stuff. So these are all things at the Higgins that they're just really kind of bizarre objects, and it's part of the arm. I was saying this in the Greek gallery a little bit. Arms and Armor. There's always this fantasy element to it, and it's sometimes hard to tell where the line is between kind of fantasy and practicality. So these are curiosity objects of one kind and another. It was a big part of what made the Higgins magical. We're not going to be able to, we don't have the Great Hall. We don't have we don't have that asset. So we have to find other ways to give people like a wow experience, like the powerful experience. So that is part of my goal here, is that imagine this entire room filled with all of this stuff and drawers to open and things to discover. I can see the divots and the throat of this armor that were basically bitten out of the armor from the impact of the joust. And in fact, on the left side there, you see 3 marks on the throat, and they correspond to the 3 points of the lancet that was used in this kind of jousting. We are so lucky to have this collection in Worcester. I mean, people grew up with Higgins and they kind of took it for granted, but it's the second largest collection of its kind in the country, and we have quite a number of world-class objects in our collection. We're so lucky to have this. And I feel very lucky to work with the collection. Things get damaged, things get lost over time, and so the armors that are today out on the market are mostly cobbled together from components that didn't originally belong together. But this suit, it all belongs together, and that's it's part of what makes it an important suit. This belonged to the Earl of Pembroke, who was one of the leading noblemen at the court of was one of the original patrons of Shakespeare's theatre company. Armor is under increasing pressure from the battlefield. It won't really stop a bullet very readily. And within a few decades of this being made, armor basically vanishes from the battlefield. And most of the armor of this period is not especially well made. It tends to be kind of very plain and utilitarian and not so nice. But this is a definite exception to that.
Making sure the environment's proper, that it's taken care of. And then a lot of the pieces that came over from Higgins, we had such a large collection and such a small staff that it was a lot of Band-Aid treatments as opposed to really being able to spend time working on pieces. So one of the advantages of coming over here is instead of taking care of the collection and putting in the exhibits and sweeping floors and helping with the building and shoveling snow, I'm just working on the pieces. So we have the time to give the collection the attention it really needs.
For each object, I'm going to need to answer a couple of questions. One is, does it belong in the collection? As I said, there's still some things that should get deaccessed. If it's staying in the collection, can it be put on permanent display? If certain kinds of organic materials, for example, can only be displayed temporarily, and then if it's on permanent display, what does that look like? Is it a star piece that's going to go into the gallery area, or is it going to be packed into the open storage? And in either of those contexts, what's going to be the angle on it? So you saw in the open storage, I grouped objects by various themes. I envision continuing to do that so that the open storage is telling something of a story. So I have to kind of figure out, okay, what are the stories that I can tell? What stories might this object fit into? What kind of physicality would the object fit into? So I'm going to have to go through the entirety of the collection along those lines, and also just like the information we have on it. Is it correct? It says this was made in 1550. Does that really seem to be true? Is it maybe a little bit earlier? Is it a modern reproduction? That's still going to be a question that I will have to ask with a lot of these objects. Okay, this object was on the wall until the last day, and it was it's way up high. So I couldn't really get a good look at it and couldn't make a good decision at that point about was it real, was it not? So I've really only been able to make that determination now that we've moved here. The blade is old, but I think reconfigured. The hilt is 19th century. So this is probably an object that I will deaccession.